Hello, everybody. Hello. Welcome to our last night of the series. Let's try this again. Now, you may be wondering, why am I sitting here by myself? This is not going to be for long. My husband will be right here momentarily. But we wanted to just first want to say thank you guys so much for taking time out of your week to come and join us to talk about some of these really relevant and important topics centered around relationships. Relationships are a part of life. They're a part of everything that we do. Even when we isolate, we still are dealing with relationships because we're built and created to have them. And so we have attempted this week to try our best to spend some time addressing some of the topics that we felt were very relevant for what we're dealing with in today's age. Of course, when we're talking about relationships, for many of you, the question was this just for married people? Absolutely not, because we start relationships very early in life, yea, even in our mother's womb. And so we wanted to be able to try our best to take just this small amount of time. There's never enough time to address every topic, but we wanted to try to address some of the things that we felt that were important and relevant to all of us. If you were not here to join us for the first night, not to worry, or for the second or third or fourth or fifth or sixth night, not to worry. These messages or this series is actually available on the Troy SDA Church YouTube page, Troy SDA Church YouTube page, and we'll make sure we put that information into the comment section. So if you were a person who didn't get a chance to watch or be a part of all of the series, don't worry. You can always go back and take a look at those things. We started off the first night talking about self-awareness and what that was about. Hello, welcome.
Seamless slide transition.
Okay. And so I'm just getting them caught up, and we are closing out our last night here with reintroducing. There are probably some people who are first timers and they weren't here throughout the week. As I said, we talked about our first night self-awareness and the importance of that. Actually kind of pulled a little bit of stuff out that we weren't aware of, in self-awareness. What else did we talk about throughout the week? We talked about
conflict.
Yes, conflict. Who does not have? Now, there may be some people like, I never have conflict. I get along with everybody, and
you might
everything
need to
is
ask
great.
The people around you, though.
And that's what we discovered, that we're not always the best judges of ourselves and how we show up in other people's lives or in the places that we work or go to school, in our marriages, even with parent-child relationships. And so we talked about that. What else did we talk about?
We also talked about communication.
Oh, yeah.
And the angle we came at it from was just the different cultural dynamics and whatnot that are involved in, the way we communicate and how we both, that is how we speak and how we listen.
Okay.
And how we hear. So, we talked about that.
Powerful.
Yeah. We also talked about, we had Pastor Jared Thomas join us.
Yes.
And we talked about shame.
That was a powerful one. I love that.
Yes. And we talked about how shame shows up in our relationships. And how shame kind of pushes away. So we talked about that. And then on last night.
Oh, we also talked about change.
Yes,
we talked about change.
We talked about change.
The power of change.
Change a little bit. We touched just a smidgen on grief when we were talking about that. But we talked about all the changes that we go through and how a lot of times we don't process those things, and they end up showing up at a later time in our relationships.
Yeah.
And so and then of course last night we talked about addiction.
Yeah.
And we talked about the way that addiction affects our relationships.
Yes.
And that was profound because we learned that it's not only the person. Well, first of all, we discussed that it's not just substance abuse.
Yeah.
They're not just people who are addicted to substances, alcohol, drugs, and the like, but there are other addictions: gambling, pornography, food, right? And even codependent relationships.
That was powerful.
So, yeah, it's not just the substances. So that was a good one. And then we discussed in the context of addiction, we talked about how it's not just the person who's the addict who is or who has the addiction that's sick, but the people that are in relationship with the individual who's wrestling with addiction. The people who are in relationships also end up taking on new roles and identities that fit into this addictive cycle. And that was profound. That was profound. But of course, we ended on the note that healing is possible. And even if the person who is addicted does not heal, the family can heal. And even if the person who has the addiction is surrounded by a family that doesn't want to heal, it doesn't stop their healing. So that was profound. So we've had some good conversations. Again, we want you, for those of you who may be listening to the first time, if you haven't subscribed yet, we want you to subscribe to the Troy Seventh-day Adventist Church or SDA Church YouTube page. Like, share. You know, it's very easy to be a blessing to someone. If something that you've heard has in fact blessed you, encouraged you, challenged you, just share it with someone else. And you can click on the little it's a thumb. It's a little thumb up type of thing, or an arrow. You can click on that, and it'll give you a link. You can take that link and you can post it into a little text box, and you can send it to someone as a text. You can send it as an email, and there's a variety of different ways that you can share it.
Powerful. So it's been a really good week, and we've enjoyed being able to spend this time with you. This is kind of an open day right now, the close of this series. We wanted to just kind of take this time first to leave it open for you guys. If you have any questions that you had from this week that maybe you felt like you wanted to ask during the week, but you didn't get a chance to, you can do so in the comment section. So if you're watching on YouTube, you have to be able to be signed in, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
But for those of you who have the special privilege of having the phone number of my wife or myself,
right,
and you're like, I don't even know how to do it. I'm seeing everybody else pop up, but I don't know how to do it. What we would ask you to do is, if you have a question or something you'd like us to talk a little bit about, then just text us. Text us. And if you see then you'll know that your text has come through. So those who are on Stamina for Life, on the Facebook page of Stamina for Life, then you can
type it inside the comment
section.
Type
the questions in there, and we'll be able to get them and try to talk about them. So we checked. We didn't get any at pm@troysdachurch.com. We didn't get any questions. So, we will start, because we're not going to just wait around and, and do nothing. So we'll talk about what you do, since
what I do.
What you do.
What I do.
You are a GRS. What is a GRS?
A GRS, the way you say it. A grief recovery specialist. I am a grief recovery specialist. That means that I walk with people through processing loss, but not just death, because most people, when they think about grief, they think about death, right? Which it does apply, but people can grieve much more than loss of life. So
you use two words interchangeably. You use grief and loss. Interchangeably. Why did you do that?
Because grief is centered around people losing something, right? And so, yes, we can lose loved ones, but we can also lose our jobs. We can lose our faith. We can lose trust, safety. We can lose tangible things. We can lose a car. We can lose a precious item. So we can literally lose an insurmountable amount of things. We can lose intangibles. And that's what the thing about trust and safety and things of that nature, that's what you would consider to be intangible, right? Not necessarily something I can touch, but it's an experience that I can have, you know? Yeah. Yeah.
So when it comes to grief, like what's the big deal? Because I'm sure somebody might say, okay, yeah, grieve, yeah, everybody, you grieve at your own pace or whatever the case may be, or but what's so important about knowing how to navigate or needing a grief recovery specialist, somebody who specializes in helping people to, in fact, like just that name, recovery.
Yeah.
Grief, it almost seems like I'm an addict.
Yeah.
I'm recovering from.
I know we don't necessarily like that word, right?
So can you break that down or unpack that for us, please?
Yeah. First of all, I think we assume that people know how to grieve. I do a class at our church. I'm starting back doing it. I started it last year. It's called the C3 Challenge. And the
C3 Challenge.
Yes, the C3 Challenge. And what it stands for is change, challenge, and choices. Okay. And the reason why I approach it from that direction is because when you say you want to do a workshop with people on grief, not a lot of people really feel up to that, right? They're like, I don't really need that. Or if they do, it's like, I don't want to go into a place talking about grief. But really, it's so much more. So again, assuming that we know what grief is or how to grieve and how to address it or approach it. So it's important that we have an opportunity to educate people on what grief looks like and what it can look like. Oftentimes what grief involves is also being able to name it, what the loss is that you've incurred. I don't know if you've ever experienced a loss and being told to stop crying or suck it up or get over it, or you got to be strong for everybody else. Those are myths. Those are things that are not true. Those are things that we say to try to help. But in our own way, we're either suppressing or we're dismissing. Yeah.
So there is a place for recovering.
Yeah.
That is that's powerful.
Vocabulary is also another important part of grief because many of us can grieve, but we don't know how to express to people what it is we're thinking or feeling. We don't know the words to put to what it is. So grief recovery helps people to be able to put words to the experience and the emotion that is accompanied with the grief, because that is a part of it. There is not a person on the face of the planet who does not have emotion. It is there, but sometimes we suppress it or it is lying dormant and we just don't know how.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So, and we talked about addiction on last night, but I've heard you say that people can even grieve an addiction.
Yeah.
So like we think, oh, great, I'm not wrestling with this addiction anymore.
Yeah.
But you suggested that people can grieve that. What is that?
Absolutely. We can grieve any change, even though it's positive. I think we all would say that a person who recovers or who stops, right, that an addiction is overcome. That's a great thing, high five to that person. But it is actually a normal thing for a person who has suffered from addiction to miss the addiction, to grieve the addiction. And it's because it had become a part of who they are, a major part of their identity. It had impacted how they see themselves and how they see the world around them. And so now that they no longer have that addiction, who am I now? Now that I no longer have that as a part of my identity, I have to be this new person. And everyone, let's be honest, sometimes even everybody around me is used to me being that person. And so, how do I deal with that? Yeah.
Yeah. So let me take it a step further. If a person doesn't have help going through the process of grieving, if a person doesn't have the vocabulary to articulate, if a person doesn't even put or categorize their loss as something that they should grieve over, then what are some of the potential unhealthy or negatives that can come from that unprocessed grief.
Unprocessed grief. Unprocessed grief is probably one of the most dangerous things that we can deal with as human beings. Going back to the thing that we were just talking about a minute ago, I believe that most of the people on our planet who are dealing with addiction, the root of it is some type of grief or loss. A lot of addicts, and when you talk to them, or people who have dealt with addiction, if you dig deep enough, if you have enough patience to, and the process that it takes to walk with people, you'll find that a lot of the roots to those things come from some type of trauma or something that they've experienced in their childhood that they've lost, or somewhere along the way. It doesn't always have to be in childhood, but God help us, for a lot of people it is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard you make a statement, and I just had it. And the statement was, it was along the lines of unprocessed grief. And I think you would say something to the effect of oh man.
As far as grief and the danger of not processing it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's inevitable. Unprocessed grief will sabotage every aspect of our life.
Oh, no. That's what it was. I remember now.
Mm-hmm.
You were talking about we were talking about grief, and I heard you sharing, and you were talking about how sometimes replace the loss.
Yeah.
That's what. So can you unpack that whole that replace the loss?
Yeah. Replacing the loss is it's a myth. But yet we're not aware that that's what we do. I'll give you probably a simple example of what that looks like. Most of it, many of us have been children, and back in our childhood, we've lost things. I like to use the thing about a pet. Oftentimes, you lose a goldfish, or you lose a cat, or they die, or something like that happens. Like, oh, don't worry about it. We'll get you another one. And what that signals to a child is that particular loss can be easily replaced. And the reason why I use an animal, because the animal does its life, right? And so that message, though, rings true in their minds in this sense. It can stay there, and it can unfortunately cross over into other aspects of our life. So imagine that child being told when they're younger that don't worry about the loss of that pet. We will get you another one. What do you think that says to a child about life?
Yeah, it's replaceable.
Mm-hmm. So not only is that replaceable, but let's say we move on, and eventually children grow up and they become teens, maybe young adults, and maybe they have relationships, what I'm saying? You start dating, and those things happen.
Oh, yeah, and I know that's one.
And it's like they come home crying like,
and it's like, don't worry about that. Johnny was a bum anyway. Right. And there's plenty of fish in the sea. Yeah. You'll get over him in no time. Right. You'll get over her in no time.
And Lord help us, we even maybe put God into it. Oh, God will give you another one. You know what I'm saying? Or I'll even throw this out here. I've even heard people say that to people who've had miscarriages. Which we can talk about in a little bit, but don't worry about it. God can give you another one, as if to say that the life that you carried is replaceable. There is no life that is replaceable. And I know that's a hard one to grasp, but the reason why I say that is this, and why I believe it, is because if life was just replaceable, then God would have replaced us the moment that we fail, right? The moment that we sinned, because sin is ugly. And so why have to deal with all of that? Just replace them. And he did not. And so we should also understand and know that there is no life that is replaceable.
Wow. That's profound. And so I can imagine that whole replace the loss thing playing itself out, especially in the area of friendships or even romantic relationships. And it's like, oh, I lost this friend, whatever, but I'll just get another one. Or, this marriage didn't work out, I'll just get another one.
Yeah.
This whatever didn't work out, I'll just get another one.
Yeah.
And, you have this thing of going over and over again. That's not to take a shot or suggest that, that some marriages don't work out.
True.
And people have a second marriage that does in fact work out.
Right.
But, we're talking about a patternistic behavior that is ready at the drop of a hat to be able to replace something that really is not as easily replaced.
Or I would say, especially when you're dealing with relationships, when you are going to lose a relationship, it is best to process it. And I mean, from any respect, whether you're getting ready to lose a loved one due to sickness or disease or health, even if it was accidental or suddenly, it is best to process through it. And even if you're going to go through such a, and we don't talk about this a lot, divorce happens, right? It would be great if it didn't, but it does happen. And all too often, I think that there are a lot of people who don't process their divorces. Right? We just try to move on to the next relationship, and we're not realizing that we're carrying this unprocessed baggage, expectations into the children. Well, maybe we'll get there.
Yeah, no, that's powerful, because the thought process is, oh, I've been married before. Now, we don't stop to say, yeah, but that didn't work out too well for you. But it's just like, oh, I've been married before. I know how to do the marriage thing.
Yeah.
So I don't need to process, what happened. It's just an experience. It's water under the bridge. And I gained some good experience from it. But that's something that we actually need to process. We need to process through.
Yeah.
And talk a little bit about, and maybe you can't go into too much detail, but talk a little bit about what we mean when you say process through.
Processing through loss. It requires some significant steps to take. One of the first things that anyone has to do when it comes to processing any type of loss is you have to acknowledge. You have to be willing to acknowledge that something was lost, and what that loss meant to you. When we can't, there's something you say a lot, or maybe we heard it at some point in time. You can't heal what you're not even willing to acknowledge. It's impossible to heal something that you cannot even admit has happened, is happening, or
that it actually hurts.
And that it hurts. And so all too often we're stuffers, and we stuff things down and we push it down. And I hate to even say we even use our religious activity or beliefs as an excuse for why we cannot process through those things. But I think that we are looking through scripture. You see that there's a lot of people who made a lot of bad decisions because they did not process the losses or the changes that took place in their life. Change is a huge thing. There's all types of areas in life that, change can impact.
Yeah, no, that is that's been an eye-opening thing for me. The whole concept of processing and acknowledging. And I realized as I was going through and I'm still really going through my process. So many losses were incurred that I had not considered as losses. And for myself, friendship is a difficult thing. And I've always said, yes, I only have a few really good friends that I've had for such a long time and whatnot. But the reality is that one of the reasons why it's difficult for me to make friends is because I moved so much. When I was growing up. I went to several different schools and, transferred here and there, make friends, get friends, then lose friends, make new friends, get friends, lose new friends, make newer friends, get newer friends, lose newer friends, move again. And so the constant moving, it really affected me. And I had not even processed that was something that was present in terms of my ability to make relationships. I think in the psychological realm, they talk about attachment theory. And so this was one of the things that was affecting my ability to attach and actually make new friends. It's like, well, why? I'm just going to lose them. You see what I'm saying? So I had not even acknowledged that was something that was present in my experience.
So you're telling me that you actually carried that, something that was a childhood experience, right? Because a lot of times we think, oh, children get over it. They're resilient. People use that word a lot. They'll bounce back, right? But it sounds like you're saying that it carried over into your adulthood.
Yeah, in fact, this crazy, man. And this some good stuff right here, because I had not really ever connected that to my fear. I remember when I was getting ready to ask you to marry me, I was afraid. And one of the first thoughts that I feared was losing you. Losing you because of some catastrophe, losing you because you just decided this dude is a bum, I don't want to be with him anymore. But my mind was really flooded with the fear of losing you. And I just until we're talking about this right now, I hadn't connected it to this attachment thing in terms of me moving and really being introduced to what I thought was true And that is, whenever you attach, you're going to lose. You know, whenever you attach, whenever you develop deep relationship, those relationships are going to be taken away from you, you know.
Now, going back to when you were talking about being a young person, because making friends is kind of, it can be kind of difficult when you're younger, right? If you know, maybe you haven't been there, maybe you've easily made friends throughout your whole life, but for a lot of people, when you think of adolescence, friendship and making friends can be difficult, and the attaching and reattaching, or detaching and reattaching thing can be. Do you think that can wreak havoc on our identity?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. I think it definitely can, in terms of us trying to process who we are, and you know, and then even who we want to attach to, or who we're willing to attach to. But I also think it affects our identity and our overall well-being. And this is something that I've heard you mention over and over again. It can affect us in community and in relationship, because one loss is piled on top of another.
It's compounded loss.
And so you have all of these, as in my case, I had losses I hadn't even processed as losses. And so, you know, if I have not acknowledged them as loss, then I can't process them as loss. Thus, I'm unable to heal from them. And so I have multiple losses that I've experienced, and I have not gone through a grief or grieving process for them. And so I think that compounded loss, as you call it, would you talk to that a little bit more? Compounded loss.
Yeah. Compounded loss is something, of course, the word compound means you're adding something on top of another, on top of another. And we experience loss as early as, you know, again, childhood, little children, babies, even, you know, as far as we can go back and remember. But again, we don't know that these things are losses, you know. And so because we're not necessarily processing them, talking about them, seeing how I felt about that loss, what did I love about it, what did I didn't like about it, you know, there's an intricate way of being able to process that. But as you have these things just constantly pile up and pile up and pile up, grief, there's a lot of faces to it. You know, believe it or not, there are people who are just constantly happy, you know, and that's because they're just trying not to, you know, there's a, you know, I don't want to deal with the grief. I just want to be happy. You know, there are people who are constantly afraid, you know, they're dealing with constant fear. There are people who, and I think maybe many of us, we live in a world on social media where we see a lot of angry, you know, more so than we probably did, you know, years ago, because it was just kind of kept away. But now you turn on your phones and you go on, you know, whether it's TikTok or Facebook or Instagram, and there's these videos, people just angry, fighting, and, you know, and you run into a person one day and they say something to you and you just fly off the handle, right? So there are these things that, and this is again, unprocessed grief, all these tentacles, these different experiences that, make no mistake about it, it's going to show up somewhere. It just takes the right time, the right situation. And I tend to think also that there are people who carry it in their bodies. If you've gone through any type of trauma or trauma education, things of that nature, it's becoming more and more, people are more and more aware that we carry trauma physically. You know, disease, we know that starts first here in the mind. And so, yeah, there are people who are dealing with losses from years ago, and it's showing up in the pain and in the, you know, the physicality of the person. And this is not to say that every single person who's dealing with sickness or disease or anything like that is because of that, but make no mistake about it, it's going to show up somewhere.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's crazy to think about. The potential for grieving someone or something, the loss of someone or something or some place, and not having processed, not having acknowledged it, and therefore being able to process it, and it's showing up and actually acting as a barrier in terms of present relationships.
If you've ever wished that you could have done something different, wish you could have done something better, or you wish you could have done something more, that's also a part of the grieving process. Loss of dreams. You know, I wanted to be here in life, or I wanted to accomplish this or do this, and life brings about a certain circumstance, or, you know, things don't happen the way that you wish they would have. And so you carry the remorse and the grief of that and people don't tend to think that they can talk about that and go through the process in order to heal.
Yeah. And, again, maybe I'm repeating the same sentiment, but I just can't help but believe that somebody hears this and they're like, man, just get over it. Just get over it and stop whining about what happened to you and stop. Just get over it and just move on and just press forward. And some people might think, man, I'm stronger than that.
Yeah.
I'm not weak. That's so weak, man. Why are you continuing the whatever? What would you have to say to people who are, who have that framework?
I think a lot of that actually comes from fear. Our ideas of strength have killed us over the years.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Say that again.
Our ideas of what constitutes strength has killed us over the years.
Wow.
Whether that's mentally, I'm telling myself that I must be strong while I'm also carrying bitterness and resentment and guilt and shame and pain. And we've talked about that this week. And so we have told ourselves these lies that suggest that to be strong means that I don't face it. I don't need to face it, right? I don't need to talk about it. And I actually feel for men in our society, because all too often I think that men especially are not really allowed to grieve. They are told from little boys, stop crying, or that's weak, or you got to toughen up, you got to be strong. And I get to a certain degree that is considered to be survival. We have to survive. But and I think I had a discussion about this online with someone not too long ago, that survival is only good to a certain point. I'm not going to knock it in this sense. I understand that there are certain circumstances in life where we literally are just trying to make it through, but we're not created to just survive. We're created to thrive, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So survival is this thing called survival brain. Survival brain keeps you in a constant state of mistrust. It keeps you in a constant state of fear. It keeps you in a constant state of not being able to rest in, being able to see things clearly. You have these lenses on, you doubt, and it's just, it's a mental torture, if I'm constantly just living in survival.
No, I have a funny thing. We love to do skits, and man, I have a funny one. We're gonna have to do a skit.
But we like to do skits.
Like being in a relationship with somebody who's in survival mode, or who's operating on survival brain. You're out to dinner and you're like, oh man, man, how does the food taste? And they got a paper bag. They're like, what? And they're dumping all the food in the paper bag so that they can have some food for later, because they're afraid that they won't have anything for later.
Yeah.
And so survival is so much on their minds that you can't enjoy what you have and what you're experiencing right here, right now.
Yeah.
Not just food, but also relationships.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, this is good, but pretty soon this person's going to leave me. So what I need to do is I need to up and out of this relationship before they leave me, because I'm trying to avoid being hurt. And if I'm hurt, that's going to slow me down. And so, okay, boom. And they're out. And just always, I'm thinking in my mind and imagining the difficulty of being in relationship and being in a healthy relationship with someone who's always thinking about survival. And ultimately, the survivor is ultimately always thinking about themselves.
Yeah.
It's profound.
Because I don't want to be hurt. I don't want to be shamed. I don't want any of these negative things to happen to me. And so in order for me to survive this, sometimes we create things unbeknownst to ourselves. We create the very things that we are trying to get away from or not experience, if that makes sense. So
yeah. But this is crazy, because you and I have talked often. I know this is just a little tree branch and we're going to come back. But we've talked often about the abundant, overwhelming use of those who want to label people as narcissists, right? Ooh. And it's a real thing, folks.
Yeah, it is.
And I think, first of all, we're all human beings, and from a Christian worldview perspective, all of us have a tinge of narcissism, because we're selfish creatures. And so
even outside, if there's a person watching who's not a Christian, statistically, and if you just study science and the brain, or if you go actually look at all of the different mental disorders or personality disorders, one of the things they're going to tell you is that that particular one, as well as others, but since we're talking about, MPD, that we all have a twinge of it, at certain times or at certain points. And so we all are guilty of some of the things that show up in that pattern.
We've been talking about survival brain.
Yeah.
Because, it occurred to me that an individual who's in survival mode can very much come across as being narcissistic.
Yeah.
Because they're always thinking about themselves, right? And of course, it's always everybody else's fault.
Yeah.
They don't ever take or own any responsibility for anything. So I think it's fascinating, not to get off into that, but the self-centeredness and always it's people who are operating there, and the reality is that we don't even know it.
Yeah.
Because we have not gotten out of the fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
We're just operating 24/7 in fight or flight, high intensity, high stress.
And I've always, and this is something that I think that because I also work as a mental health coach, right? And, in school right now, doing some things with social work or whatever. And one of my teachers I really love, because they talk about the practicality of mental health and how we need to be able to deal with these things, right? And at least for me, what I feel like I'm noticing is we hop on these bandwagons, right? That's because we're able to be here and watch you guys. Social media is a great thing, right? But social media has made all of us somehow clinical psychologists. It has made all of us given all of us the ability to be able to diagnose everyone around us and be able to, and don't get me wrong, I think that it is a beautiful thing for us to be introduced to messages that help us to be more self-aware. There are really some great positive things happening on social media. But I also think that it can tend to send us in that same dangerous area where we become to be others focused about people's need to change and people's need to give an excuse for why everybody around us is behaving a certain way. And it can be very dangerous for us to become so inundated with all of this information, right? That we begin to go around and diagnose everybody around us, but we neglect ourselves. And that's what it tends to give us these weapons to be able to use. Now, I'm not saying ignore them because, again, there's great information, but information being tossed around without transformation is very dangerous.
Ooh, information without transformation.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep that one. But that's why I love throwing myself under the bus.
That's the best thing to do. Run yourself over, back it up.
I have plenty of, help me moments.
Yeah.
That I can point to where I'm like, Lord, help. Yeah. Some I'm willing to share. Of course, others, there's been too much buffoonery to even be desirous of acknowledging it. Yeah. At least in a public manner. But so is it possible for us to because the title, your title is Grief Recovery. Yeah. What's the difference between that? Because some of our friends may have been like, well, yeah, I am, I've gone through a grief share or whatnot. And so, what's the difference between grief recovery and some of the other things that are out there?
There are a lot of good things out there. One of the things that is most common to people is a thing called grief share, which is really great, right? A place where you can go. A lot of churches actually have this program running, or community centers where people go and share with other people who have grief. That they go and actually open up, and they feel safe to be able to do that, which is actually really a good thing. So I want to put that out there, that it's nice to be able to go into an environment with other people, because we're created for community. We've been talking about that all week, right? However, the difference between grief share and grief recovery is that grief share will only take you to a certain point. It's about you sharing your grief, right? And there are some of us who share the same grief for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, which we don't have the right to tell someone how long to grieve, but definitely we were not created to grieve forever. We are not mentally We're not mentally built for it. We're not physically, because when we talked about earlier that we carry the grief in our bodies, right? We're not physically built for it. We're not built to do that communally. How many times have we been in relationship with people, right? And maybe we've been the person, or we've been on the other end, and it seems as though this person is just continuously sad, continuously broken mentally or emotionally about a loss that is, that has been some time, and I want to touch on this because I think one of our friends here, Kendra, she put here, if you want to click on it so others can see it.
Yeah, it was up there already, but I'll put it back.
Okay. And I want to speak to this as it says that people need to be taught how to grieve. It's a process, and there isn't a time frame as to how long it takes. You're absolutely right. No one has the right to be able to tell someone how to grieve or how long their grief process should take, right? So that is a very good thing to put out there. I think we like to be able to say, like, okay, how long is it going to take you? Okay, hurry up and get over it. There is no such thing as getting over it. The only thing that we can do and we are supposed to do is we're supposed to go through it. But going through it is the process of healing. Okay. Recovery involves, what is different than grief share, is that I am actually able to sit down and actually process through what it is that I've lost. And what did it mean to me, right? What are the attachments and what are the major impacts of this loss in my life? And then once I'm able to open that up, I'm actually able to put words, to that loss. How did it actually impact me? You know what I'm saying? Some of us don't even know what to say. And then being able to speak out loud to another person, because this is the thing about loss of something, especially with a loved one. There are times when we wish we would have said things that we didn't get a chance to say. There are times we wish we could have done things again, different, better, or more. But because the person is gone, and as far as we all know, there is no communication with the dead, right? They cannot hear us. We cannot hear them. So does that mean I'm forever stuck with these undelivered emotions and communications in my life? And I will tell you, no, you're not stuck. There is a process that you can go through that can help you to be able to take those undelivered communications, those undelivered thoughts and dreams, things you wish you would have done, said different, better, or more, and process through them and get them out. Because if you do not get those things out, they just stay in, and it's like rotten fruit. You know what I'm saying? It's not healthy for us. Yeah.
That's profound. So I like the idea that I can recover from the pain of my losses.
Because I hear people say that all the time. People say, I'm never going to be able to, I'm never going to forget this loss. And you're right. You won't ever forget. We are not built to forget, that's love. You know what I'm saying? If you love someone, and, what if it's a less than loved one?
Wait. Say that again.
A less than loved one.
One more time.
A less than loved one.
Less than loved one.
Yes.
Okay, you're going to have to help us there. Less than loved one.
A less than loved one. The truth is, there are people in our lives that we, I'm going to step out on a limb, that we despised or hate, who hurt us, who are not good people, or who did things to us that were not good, or we had experiences with them that were hurtful. And we can grieve the loss of that person. I guess I can give you a couple of examples. I know time is running out. Maybe you'll have to come to the C3 challenge to try to hear a little bit more about this.
That's right.
But, God forbid that we have someone who's hurt us or has caused us pain, and that person, either we don't know where they are or they've died. And does that mean that I'm forever stuck with, because that person can't apologize to me? They can't acknowledge the wrong that they've done to me. They just can't, and some of us wait our whole lives to get that. I'm sorry. I apologize. Please forgive me. Well, if a person never does it because they choose not to, or if they can't do it because they're not alive to, am I forever stuck carrying this pain and this grief? No, you're not. That's what grief recovery is for. Grief recovery is about helping people to process through that and helping them to get to the point where they can process and find a way to deal with that. No, you're not destined for the rest of your life to carry this grief.
That's
no.
good. That's good. Wow. Well, listen, it's an amazing thing. It was quite transformative for me. I was one of your guinea pig clients. I was one of your guinea pig clients, but
we needed it. We needed it.
Quite an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And one of the things that stood out to me as we get ready to let you all go tonight was that the present thing that I was experiencing in my life was being made more potent because of the unresolved grief issues that I had in my life that I had not acknowledged or ever processed.
Yeah.
So that made what I was going through right here just that much more powerful.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's an amazing process of healing and understanding and liberation, freedom for me.
Yeah.
No doubt, because of the person who was leading me through it.
You're gracious. You're gracious. I what I'll say is this: it has been profound for me. Even going into that profession and ended up walking in that direction was a leading of God because of my own pain and loss. As someone who's gone through several different types of grief, whether it's grief because of trauma in life, different types of abuses, or struggles, or just losing people. Intangible things, loss of trust, loss of identity, loss of faith, even. I've been there, and I'm so grateful to God for understanding and coming to that realization that no, I don't have to walk around as a wounded person for the rest of my life, that there's freedom. And God forbid that, we, even in our church community, you know what I'm saying, that we're coming, frequently, and yet we're walking out still carrying that baggage of grief and pain. But the truth is, sometimes even in our church communities, we don't talk about it. We spiritualize things, and we just say pray enough and pray more, and God is going to take care of it. And to it, yes, there are things that are true, but not the truth. Meaning, yes, God will take care, but we serve a God that calls us to be able to open up these things and to do heart work, surgery, as it were. And he will be the one to sew you up, but make no mistake about it, he can't sew you up knowing that you're still infected. So there's a work to be done.
Gotta clean it out.
Yeah.
Well, listen, there are literally so many things that we can talk about. And I'm glad that actually tonight we got an opportunity to touch a little bit on grief and how grief can impact our present well-being, as well as our as well as how we show up in relationships with others. So listen, we want to thank you guys for joining us.
All week
Let's
long.
try this again.
Yeah.
And I hope that you literally try this again. If there was something that was shared that you feel like was productive, it was encouraging, it was educational, it was a blessing, I hope you'll run it, play it back again. I hope you'll share it, and I hope that you will ultimately be blessed. Go ahead.
And we had promised, and we're going to get to that. If you are a person who had registered, the only way we can give you the tools, some of the things that we talked about throughout the week, we need you to register at the church's website so that we can send that stuff to you. We'll try to get that to you over the next couple of weeks. And so we're just really thankful to be able to come and spend this time with you guys. We love talking about all of these things, and maybe we'll do it again.
Maybe we will.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll try this.
We'll try this again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yes. Yeah.
Thank you, Kendra. Bless your heart. We love you guys.
Yes. Well, let us go ahead and pray together and close out our time.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Father in heaven, thank you for the opportunity that we've had to be together this week. Just, a short time, an hour or less, for the past 7 days. We pray, dear Lord, that some of the tools that have been shared and what we will send to our friends, for those who have registered, that those tools can be put to use. And I pray, Lord, that it would help to nurture and nourish their communities and relationships. And I pray, Father, that it would change the way that each and every one of us shows up. Lord, we're grateful that you are a healer. You can heal us from grief. You can heal us and deliver us from addiction. You can heal us and deliver us from shame. You can heal us and deliver us from a broken past. You can give us new ways to communicate. You can put a new song in our mouths. And so we ask that you would do all of these things for us. We thank you, you and you alone. In the worthy name of Jesus, we ask. Amen.
Amen. Amen. All right, guys, have a great night. And hey, if you are looking for a church to visit, if this is your first time watching, you're welcome to come and join us and visit us at the Troy SDA Church in Troy, Michigan. We would love to have you. Absolutely. All right. Take care, guys. Happy week.
God bless.